or road to Tobago's self-government. Welcome to another episode of Side by Side or Road to Tobago's self-government. In this episode, we're speaking about lawmaking authority. We're going to be joined by Attorney at Law, Ingrid Melville.
Today it is quite significant that we are in the building that houses the oldest legislature in this country, as we are going to be talking about lawmaking power and the ability or inability of us to make laws in Tobago. Because under the Tobago House of Assembly Act, in section 29 of the Act, which now applies to us, Act number 40 of 1996, it allows the Assembly to make laws. However, that is quite a tedious process, as we will explain as we go on. By lawmaking power, we mean the ability to be able to pass laws, to enact laws, which will govern the island of Tobago, its people, and its developmental agenda. The authority to make laws in Trinidad and Tobago is vested in the Parliament by virtue of Section 53 of the Constitution. The Tobago House of Assembly provides the Assembly with limited lawmaking power. In fact, it is the ability to make subsidiary legislation. By virtue of Section 29 of the Tobago House of Assembly Act, the Assembly can debate and pass laws which are then sent to Cabinet for Cabinet to take to the hallowed walls of the Parliament of Trinidad and Tobago. Thus far, from 1996 to present, this has been totally ineffective. There have been attempts by the Assembly to make laws. In fact, looking at the national security situation and the security situation in Tobago, the Assembly attempted to put in place a Tobago Police Service. This bill was sent to Cabinet more than a decade ago. Up until now, there has been no enactment. As we know, we are now in a national security crisis, which negatively affects even the island of Tobago. There was an attempt to pass a law to govern the marine spaces around Tobago, such as the Bucca Reef, the world-famous Bucca Reef and Nylon Pool. Once again, the bill was sent to Cabinet, and as far as I am aware, there has been no onward transmission to the Parliament. Most notably, in 2016, the Assembly debated the bill which should provide Tobago with autonomy. That bill was sent to Cabinet. The feedback from Cabinet was that the bill was ultra-virus, null and void, and so could not be moved forward for enactment. In 2018, the Assembly reconsidered the issue, held several consultations with members of Cabinet, and a new bill was drafted. This one did not pass the acid test of a debate in the Assembly, but was sent forward to Cabinet. That was the bill which Dr. Rowley read in the Parliament in 2018, which went on to the scrutiny of a joint select committee of the Parliament, and which was transposed into two bills which at present are before the Parliament of Trinidad and Tobago. Those two bills were debated and are at committee stage before the House. It is noteworthy that one of these bills is the Constitutional Amendment Tobago Self-Government Bill, which allows for lawmaking authority in Tobago to be written into the Constitution. The other bill is the Tobago Island Government Bill. However, a scrutiny of these two bills would reveal that although there is a proposed amendment to Section 53 of the Constitution of Trinidad and Tobago, it does not provide the Assembly in Tobago with full authority to make laws. In fact, the amendment to Section 53 of the Constitution provides the Tobago House of Assembly with the authority to make laws. However, the nature of laws which the Assembly would be able to make is prescribed and written into the Island Government Bill, which is the other legislation. Therefore, the lawmaking authority which the Tobago House of Assembly would have by virtue of these two bills remain less than the lawmaking authority of Parliament. The areas which the Assembly would be able to make laws for, they are written in a schedule of the Tobago Island Government Bill. The definition of the area which the Assembly would be able to make laws for is the land space of Tobago, its internal waters and inland waters. Therefore, even the bill which the Assembly attempted to have passed to regulate the marine spaces like Bucca Reef, the Tobago House of Assembly, if these bills are passed, would not be able to make laws to govern that space. We know the Assembly has been subject to legal action when someone was injured in the waters close to Tobago. The Assembly was found liable and had to do a large payout because the responsibility for those waters rests with the Tobago House of Assembly at present. That would be erased if these bills are passed in their present form.
We have to take a break, but stay with us. We'll be right back.
One. 6. Beautiful island.
When we speak about greater autonomy for the island of Tobago, I believe that yes, we should get greater autonomy because with the amount of resources that we have on this little island of Tobago, we can make a difference and we can stand alone. We can handle our own affairs. Once we get internal self-governance for the island, we can do what we have.
It is remarkable that this building once housed a legislature to make laws for Tobago, as well as a courthouse where the Tobago judiciary interpreted these laws. Now, we are seeking that the two bills before the Parliament should provide Tobago with the ability to enact laws with an authority that is similar to the authority which Parliament has, an authority that is entrenched in the Constitution. In Clause 8 of the draft Constitutional Amendment Tobago Self-Government Bill, there is a new Clause 8.2 which will be inserted within Section 53 of the Constitution. Now, the issue, as I indicated before, is that the schedule which demarcates the areas for which the Tobago Island government would be able to make laws is in the other bill, the Tobago Island Government Bill. The schedule which is within the Tobago Island Government Bill omits a number of areas which the Tobago House of Assembly at present has the authority to enact assembly laws for. I do not know if this is an oversight because the Tobago Island Government Bill has two schedules. One schedule is for the lawmaking power of the Assembly, and the other is a schedule which deals with the areas that the Executive Council would have authority for. It should be noted that the issue of lawmaking authority for Tobago is really a rollout or a bringing to life of the right to self-determination for the people of Tobago. The right to self-determination is a human right which is written in international instruments such as the International Covenant for Civil and Political Rights and the International Covenant of Economic, Social and Cultural Rights. And basically, what these instruments provide is that peoples should be able to make laws for their economic, social, and cultural development. The present situation in Tobago does not allow that. In 1977, when A.N.R. Robinson moved the motion for the reinstitution of the Tobago House of Assembly, this was one of the areas that was dealt with, because the motion for internal self-government for Tobago was to allow Tobago as one of the islands within the sovereign democratic state of Trinidad and Tobago to be able to make laws to govern the island. Without laws, there will be a state of anarchy. We can say that the parliament is ably making laws for the entire country. But if we look at the issue of data-driven lawmaking, evidence-based lawmaking, the population of Tobago and the data which can be gleaned from Tobago is approximately 5% of the national data. So any laws made would factor in what the 95% of the data provides. So any peculiarities for Tobago would be overlooked in these laws. Further to this, in terms of representatives in the parliament, in the lower house, Tobago has 2 out of 41 representatives. In the Senate at present, I think we have, with the recent changes, we have 4 Tobago representatives. The question remains, will they, because they are these representatives in the parliament, are Trinidad-based, even though they are from the island of Tobago, the day-to-day implementation in Tobago is under the jurisdiction of the Tobago House of Assembly. And therefore, the Tobago House of Assembly and the Executive Council, they understand the challenges and the needs of the people in Tobago and are best placed to make laws which will allow the island to rise to a higher level of development. The Advisory Council, which scrutinized the 2 bills which are before the Parliament and had the opportunity to consider them together with the Tobago House of Assembly Act number 40, which is the present law in force in Tobago. After such consideration, the Advisory Council recommended that the areas over which the executive presently has jurisdiction, the areas which are written into the 5th schedule of the Tobago House of Assembly Act, that Tobago should have lawmaking power for these areas. The areas over which the Tobago House of Assembly or the Tobago legislature should have the ability to make laws are areas which impact on the day-to-day work and development in Tobago. For instance, the issue of licensing. Over the last couple months, there has been so much conflict between the licensing authority and the operations of the licensing department under the Division of Infrastructure of the Tobago House of Assembly. This is the opportune moment to reconsider these areas and ensure that there are not 2 sources of power, because this creates conflict and underdevelopment. Issues such as education. Our schools, for instance, I remember there was on one occasion when there was a storm warning in Tobago, and the declaration was made by the Secretary of Education that the school should be closed. And there was some level of conflict because the ministry in Trinidad had not issued that directive. These issues should not arise. They arise because there are two sources of power. And if Tobago has clear lawmaking authority at the same level as the Parliament to make laws for issues like education in Tobago, that would be removed. The issue of tongue and country planning. As we know, for any infrastructural development, tongue and country planning is critical. At present, for more than 2 years, there has been a lot of discussion and deliberation between the tongue and country department, which is being run from Trinidad under the Ministry of Planning, and the Tobago House of Assembly. Because the Tobago House of Assembly in the 5th schedule has responsibility for tongue and country planning. However, the department is being administered from the level of the ministry in Trinidad. And this creates some level of conflict and does not really advance the island's development. What is the problem that would arise if tongue and country planning is being administered in Tobago under the Tobago House of Assembly, where the Tobago House of Assembly can make laws and regulations for this area? A lot of discussion, a lot of deliberation, and interviews were done by the Joint Select Committee. I cannot recall seeing any explanation of the mischief which would arise in law if the Tobago Island government has responsibility for this area. The self-determination of Tobago, by being able to make laws in Tobago, would allow several professional cadres of young people in Tobago to develop and to arise. It would create a new perspective in terms of human capital development in Tobago, because we will need a legal drafting department, for instance. We will need people who understand how international law works, because we would have people who would be able to do the research to draw upon what happens in different jurisdictions which have lawmaking power for different areas which arise in Tobago. Because there are areas in Tobago which are not parallel or do not reflect with Trinidad, but we will find that other jurisdictions like smaller island development states might have a better situation where we can be able to draw an example for shaping our laws. In terms of human capital development, there is huge potential and huge scope, because we would be able then to even do our own parallel reports in terms of international instruments. Yes, the country will continue to submit the instruments, but because we will have the data that is disaggregated from national data, while we are crafting our laws and policies, we will be able then to have people who can be able to do that. As we are moving into the area of digitization, it is remarkable because within these walls here in Tobago, in the Tobago House of Assembly in the 19th century, laws were made which at present guide the whole issue of digitization on a global scale. courts in Italy have applied laws made in the Tobago House of Assembly of that era. And so we would like to see our Tobago island government being on the cusp of development once again. I hope everyone will be able to look at the issue of the self-determination of Tobago dispassionately and look at the potential for the entire country if Tobago is given lawmaking power. There should be no fear that a state of anarchy would arise in Tobago. In every lawmaking authority, there are checks and balances. And so laws made in Tobago will be weighed in the balance before they are passed. And they will be sent to the president for assent. Therefore, Tobago should not be given and it should be taken back at the same time, as the present legislation would provide. Because while the Constitution as amended, the proposed amendment would allow Tobago to make laws, there is no perspective of what laws Tobago would be able to make. That is given in ordinary legislation. And so, while the authority is in the Constitution and it appears that Tobago will have a constitutional lawmaking authority as the international instruments prescribe, the actual laws which will be made are prescribed in the Island Government Bill. And so the actual power, the real teeth is in legislation, ordinary legislation, not within the Constitution. This is not what obtains in countries where there is a devolution of authority or where there's a distribution of authority, such as the Holland Islands, for instance. The authority is clear and it allows the legislature to be able to work. It is unfettered. So I hope that our lawmakers in the parliament, particularly our representatives from Tobago, can be able to dispassionately consider the lawmaking authority of Tobago in a real way, in a way that will allow the island to develop without party political lens, and so allow Tobago, the present and future generations, to be able to take a handle and to take hold of the island's development.
And that's how we ended this episode. Be sure to join us next week for another episode of Side by Side or Road to Tobago's Self-Government.